أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. ربي لا تؤاخذني مما يقولون واغفر لي ما لا يعلمون واجعلني خيرا مما يظنون. Amma ba'd. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to the House of Dua, and welcome to this edition designed to remind ourselves of a very important issue we often neglect in the life we live. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, today we want to discuss the issue of death of knowledge, rapid decline in knowledge in the life that we live today. This is a very serious problem that many of us ignore, but we are ignoring it, not knowing that it has a very serious consequence on us in the life we live. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, to us as believers, it's not surprising that we are going through this period of death in knowledge. That is rapid decline in knowledge. It's not surprising because the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam had prophesied long time ago that one of the signs that will be available to mankind for us to know that the day of accountability is coming near is death of knowledge, decline in knowledge. According to the hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam said, it is not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to snatch knowledge away from the planet. It is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to, from time to time, snatch away the souls of those who have this knowledge. When those who have the knowledge begin to die away one after the other, the consequence is that you leave the entire system to the ignorant people to lead. And this is what is prevailing now in today's world. My dear brothers in Islam, you remember when the Prophet was available in Mecca, one of the most frequent questions that the disbelievers were asking was, when is the day of judgment? When is it going to come? They were always asking the Prophet this question. As a result of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed a verse in Surah Muhammad, chapter 47 of the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَهَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا سَاءَ أَنْ تَأْتِيَهُمْ بَغْتَةً فَقَدْ جَاءَ أَشْرَاطُهَا فَأَنَّىٰ لَهُمْ إِذَا جَاءَتْهُمْ ذِكْرَاهُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Holy Prophet Muhammad, are they waiting for the day of accountability before they believe? Whereas the signs of the day of accountability have already appeared. The signs are already here. And if they are waiting for the final day of accountability, of what benefit will that be to them when the reminder of it is brought to them? My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, it is true that the signs of the coming of the day of judgment are already in abundance. One of them is the rapid decline in knowledge, as prophesied by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. This is not restricted to Islam. It's a general problem. Even when it comes to Western education nowadays, it's very common to find that only fewer and fewer people are opting to go for higher degrees or to attend college or to acquire specialty knowledge that is necessary for us to survive in the world. The greater majority are just satisfied with either a first degree or a certificate before acquisition of the first degree. The result of this is that we have more and more people in the world with less and less necessary qualifications to run the world. Why is this phenomenon, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam? Several reasons are there. To some people, gone are the days when knowledge was the only primary source of contentment in life. when knowledge was the primary path towards survival and success. There are many alternatives now to self-actualization and self-contentment. You can gain a lot of wealth nowadays through things like sports, through buying and selling, through other activities in life that don't necessarily require one to go to college. As a result of that, more and more people are paying less attention to education. Another reason is the ever-rising cost of education itself. The various governments across the world have priced education beyond the reach of the common man. And so, people are just walking away, especially when the alternatives are there. And another reason is the long time it takes to acquire a degree necessary to survive in the world that we live. More and more preconditions for employment are there nowadays that unless you get a degree or a master's degree or above, you are not likely to get a very good job in the society. Nowadays, therefore, it takes between 25 to 30 years to acquire such qualifications. And even after you have acquired the qualification, for how long are you going to work with it? At the age of 50 or 55, they ask you to retire, which means you struggle to acquire a qualification for 30 years and you just use it for 25 or 30 years and you are out of employment. These are some of the things that discourage people from going to higher and higher education. And another reason for it is that, people just don't develop interest in other forms of knowledge, especially religious knowledge, which of course is the best knowledge unknown to so many people. This is the knowledge you need when you begin to get old. Not only do you need it even when you are not old, but it becomes even more important to you as those who are old, who are no longer in a position to jump around as others do in the society. They are just content with knowing their Lord. They want a way to get close to their Creator because where they are going was becoming nearer than where they are coming from. That's the time religious knowledge is very valuable. But if you ignore the knowledge at the beginning of your life or at the middle of your life, then of course you retire into a vacuum and you find yourself stressed out from time to time. People resort to superstition in such a situation. This is the difficulty we have in today's life. My dear brothers in Islam, the most important reason above all this, responsible for the death of knowledge in the life we live now, is what we call the availability of virtual knowledge. Knowledge that you acquire through the computer, through the internet. Knowledge that is already made ready. Knowledge that is just available by the pressing of a button. And you think you acquire such knowledge, but unfortunately, virtual knowledge does not stay in the brain. It washes away so quickly. My dear brothers in Islam, technology has altered the life of human beings to a level where we don't know the right from the left. In the days of real education, in-person education, which is the most suitable for human existence, which is prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in-person education used to be the way by which people acquire their knowledge. But that has been replaced nowadays by computer. With the pressing of a button, you have a lot of information available to you. Even though you may satisfy your instinct at that time to acquire what you needed, but that knowledge will not stay with you for a very long time. Find out from those who have acquired such knowledge. And dear brothers in Islam, you are aware, as I know, that unlike the past, when we used to memorize phone numbers, when students in the school used to use their brain to memorize some formula in mathematics and equations in chemistry, and memorize passages in literature and other subjects, nowadays, those are considered to be old schools of thought, and people are running away from them, relying more and more on calculators, problems that are already solved, relying more and more on very long algorithms to help solve some difficult, complex situations. As a result of that, engineer graduates, he does not know what is happening in history. He does not know anything about geography. Ask him where is the location of England. He cannot tell you. Same thing is true of somebody who is a doctor. You are discussing politics, he's looking at you, cannot contribute because he has no knowledge about politics. Same thing with those who read economics. They have no knowledge about, religion. And so on and so forth. You can go on talking about this. Very limited level of knowledge nowadays. A very narrow focus that does not expose you to what is happening around you. And this is not good for us. In the past, a graduate from the college was an all-rounder. At least he could talk every subject, every sphere of human life with some certain level of knowledge. But that is no longer the case today. Why? Because we are relying on virtual knowledge. We are relying on computer. We are relying on knowledge that is already made, abridged knowledge. The same thing happens in Islam. You can find sheikhs nowadays who are specialized in hadith, but they don't know anything about fiqh. They don't know anything about seerah. You can see a person nowadays who memorizes the Quran, but cannot write a few alphabets of the Quran, cannot even write a single ayah of the Quran. Why? Because he just focused on that memorization. Maybe using gadgets that are not in person. This is the problem we are facing in today's life. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, there is no substitute to in-person education. This is the way knowledge has been transmitted to mankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't ask Jibril alayhi salam to stay over there in heaven and dictate the Quran to the Holy Prophet Muhammad, or open a page there where the Prophet could read it. No, Jibril came down. He was asked to come down to meet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And he told him, Ikra, read. This is the first commandment upon the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, emphasizing more than anything else the need for us to read. And reading is a vital part of education. And when these verses began to come down, the Prophet made sure that the verses were not just memorized or recited, they were written down. Again, another very important aspect of in-person education. This is not available in virtual education. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the verses came down, some of them were written in skins of animals or back of trees or on stones because there was no paper at that time. And then there were people who were blessed with ability to memorize the Quran, which has continuously been the way by which the Quran has been passed down from generation to generation. As those who memorize the Quran, it requires in-person reading. It requires somebody to correct you, to tell you where you are going. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, this is what is missing in today's world. And at the onset of the coronavirus, we have now seen that various governments across the world have stopped our children from going back to school for in-person reading on the ground that it's not safe. If it's not safe, we must make it a priority to make the school safe for the children so that they can go back to school and engage in in-person learning. What they are learning at home now for more than 1 year, trust me, will not remain with them for a very long time. It's not a persistent knowledge. Virtual knowledge is a knowledge of the moment. It does not dwell in you for a long time. Sometimes when you sit with an alim and he's teaching you, some of the digressions he may make may even be more educative than the subject matter in question. So if you don't have that opportunity to sit with a lecturer or an alim, you are losing out a lot. And dear brothers and sisters in Islam, this is very crucial. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam will gather the Sahaba and dictate the verses of the Quran to them and ask them to memorize them and ask them to write them and ask them to compare notes with him and so on. That's how the Quran was compiled. Let us take the case of Musa alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa alayhi salam, there's somebody who knows more than you. Musa was shocked to hear that. How could I find that person who knew more than me? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, travel to the junction of the two seas. That's where you're going to find the man. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not ask Musa to sit down in one place? Musa had to go on a journey to discover the man who was more learned than him. And when he finally met the man, he told him, Hal atabiuka ala antu alimani mima ulimuta rushuda. Can I accompany you so that you teach me knowledge that you have, so that you can guide me? Because I know you have a very important knowledge. But the man told Musa, you will not have patience to follow me. Again, it's a long story. But Musa continued to follow the man. It was as a result of his impatience that he couldn't gain as much as he would have gained from the man. Again, patience is a very cardinal element of learning. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, that's another example for us to know that we have to practice in-person learning. Another example that is available for us is, as I said, Jibril alayhi salam was sent to dictate the Quran to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. But in addition to coming once in a while to give verses to the Prophet, are you aware of the beautiful hadith of Jibril alayhi salam coming down to sit with the Prophet and the Sahaba to teach them the religion? The Sahaba were gathered and the Prophet was in their midst, educating them. A man came from nowhere, properly dressed, didn't look like those who were living in the area, didn't look like somebody who was even traveling. He sat close to the Prophet and was asking the Prophet questions. He asked the Prophet, what is Islam? The Prophet told him. He asked the Prophet, what is Iman? The Prophet told him. Every time the Prophet told him, he would tell the Prophet, so doctor, you have spoken the truth. If you know the truth, why are you asking? But they didn't have the opportunity to ask the man, the Sahaba who were watching. Then the man asked the Prophet, what is Ihsan? He told them, Anta Buddha Allah ka naka tara, fa'in lam takun tara, fa'in dahu yaraka min aythu la tara. To worship Allah as if Allah is seeing you. For if you don't see Allah, Allah is seeing you from where you don't see Him. Then the man asked the Prophet, when is the day of accountability? The Prophet told him, the one who is being asked does not know more than the one who is asking. In other words, he had no knowledge of it. That knowledge lies with Allah. But when the man finally rose and departed, the Prophet asked the Sahaba, do you know that person? They told the Prophet, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, Allah and the Prophet know best. The Prophet told them, that's Jibril alayhi salam. He has come down to teach you your deen. My dear brothers and sisters, consider that. This is how the deen was taught in person. Jibril came in the form of a human being to teach the Prophet the deen and to teach the Sahaba the deen, and for all of us to know the deen and to know that in person is very important in the learning process. My dear brothers and sisters, we have more and more ignorant people nowadays in the world we live. They have a very short, limited quantity of knowledge, either in engineering or in medicine or in any other field, very little knowledge. But ask them about any other aspect of life, they don't know. There's a friend of mine who is a professor in the college. He asked me where I came from. I said, I came from Nigeria. A professor. I asked him, do you know where Nigeria is? He told me Nigeria is in East Africa. I said, no. Then he immediately took his cell phone. He was looking for what I call virtual knowledge. He went to the cell phone and the cell phone told him Nigeria was in West Africa. This was the conversation. This is what is happening in today's world, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam. There might be some protests going on now in Myanmar or in Hong Kong or in Palestine. You ask the average person today, where are these places? They have no idea, unfortunately. And you find out that person may have been a degree holder, man or woman. This is why we at this end would seriously call for the need for us to return back to actual knowledge, learning in person. We join those who are calling on the government, therefore, right now, to do whatever is possible to send our children back to school. so that they can have the opportunity to learn in person and interact with their colleagues. That is what we gain in school. We cannot, on the excuse of coronavirus, continue to keep our children out of the school. It's not in their own interest, and it's not in the interest of the society we live in. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, coming to Islam specifically, we know that Islam is one of the fastest growing religions in the world. As a matter of fact, the fastest growing religion in the world. Just as the religion is fast growing, so ignorance is fast growing, if not outgrowing the religion itself. More and more people in Islam who call themselves Muslims have no idea about the Quran. They don't know the number of days in Islam, the names of the days in the week in Islam. They don't know the names of the months in Islam. They don't know when it's time to fast. They rely on just what? Virtual knowledge, hearsay. They go to the masjid nowadays, all they listen to is the voice of the reciter. Oh, it's very melodious, instead of listening to the content of what is being recited. And dear brothers and sisters in Islam, there are many people nowadays who memorize several verses of the Quran or, several chapters of the Hadith, but they have no knowledge of fiqh. They have no knowledge of seerah. They don't know the interlink between these verses. And they don't know that there are some verses that have been abrogated and replaced by other verses. My dear brothers and Islam, this is a very serious problem. Reliance on virtual knowledge, therefore, should not be encouraged. Yes, it's beneficial on a temporary basis, but it should not be the start all and end all for our kids' education, and for ourselves especially. We can keep on talking about this, and this is why in the series we are about to begin next week, inshallah, we want to start talking about this. And the series will be titled, Read. The first commandment given to the Holy Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We want to look at the aspect of reading in question. We want to look at how learning can be acquired in the best way. We want to look at what you need to actually be a broad-based person as far as knowledge is concerned. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam continuously emphasized that we should go out to seek knowledge, especially knowledge of the Quran. And he says, knowledge is the religion itself. If you don't have knowledge, you cannot practice this religion. As I've always said, Islam is the only religion in the world that is not practiced by chance. It's not based on the whims and caprices of individuals. It's based on knowledge. Knowledge of the Quran and knowledge of the Hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. I'm too old is not an excuse to acquire that knowledge. And I'm too busy is not an excuse to acquire that knowledge. Oh, I have technologies, it's not an excuse either. Step out of your home, meet an alim, sit for 1 hour or 2, and acquire knowledge. Knowledge that will last forever with you and take you to the akhirah. Let's not rely on short-term measures to the problems that we are facing. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I encourage you, therefore, to tune in for the next series we are beginning next week. And as I stated earlier, the cumulative effect of these productions will make you a better Muslim. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make all of us better Muslims. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take shaitan away from our lives and take our life far away from shaitan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us guide our children and to remove the problem of coronavirus so that our children will go back to school. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make them acquire good knowledge, knowledge that is beneficial. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam was always fond of asking for that knowledge. And he was always seeking refuge against knowledge that cannot be of benefit. He declared, Allahumma inna na'udzubuka min al-ilmin la yanfa. That's what he normally say. And again he will say, Allahumma inna nas'aluka imana sadiqa wa ilman nafi'a. You see, he was asking for knowledge that is beneficial and seeking refuge against knowledge that is not beneficial. We ask Allah to give our children knowledge that is beneficial. Rabbana taqabbal innaka anta samiul alim wa tub alayna ya maulana innaka antal ghafurur karim. subhanallahi wa bihamdik, subhanaka allahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.